Hello and welcome to our series of podcasts where we discuss interesting topics around the role and impact of cybersecurity technologies that touch the many facets of our lives. My name is Raymond Lee and I'm the COO here at V-Key, and I'll be your host in this episode where we are talking to Chiang Kai, CTO of V-Key, about how, despite all the technology available to us today, it is our habits and behaviors that cause security ecosystems to crash. Welcome, CK. To put today's conversation into perspective, the last 2 decades have seen a tremendous push towards digitalization and the digitization of many services over the web and across mobile platforms. With this has come an acute consciousness of security and the privacy of the data that is floating around in cyberspace. The one comment I'd like to surface here is that despite all the tech that companies have invested in over the years to secure data, secure transactions, and digital identity, it is apparent that many of these are in fact put in place because of the way in which we as workers behave. After all, these systems are designed to help us do things faster, more efficiently, and of course, more securely. But there is an argument that the behaviors take time to change. Long-standing processes within organizations and governments are now replaced and enhanced by technology, are still very much subject to the faults and mistakes brought on by us, the users. Chiang Kai?
Yes, I think that is more or less true, as you can have the most secure system in the world, but it is difficult to prevent someone from misusing it. Social engineering is one good example of why, even if a system uses strong security with two-factor authentication, can still be attacked. Let's say you have a website or mobile app that requires user to provide not just a password, but also a one-time password received via SMS to log in. On the surface, it sounds very secure, but what if the user is fooled into logging into a fake website or fake app? His passwords will then be leaked to the attacker. Such phishing scams are really commonplace. Another common problem is the indiscriminate installation of software. Nowadays, it's just too easy to install a new piece of software. You just go to the online store, tap on install, and you have a new app running within seconds. The problem is that most people, especially those who are not tech savvy, are not aware that the implications can be grave should the software misbehave. In the mobile world, we have people who intentionally root or jailbreak their smartphones so that they can have more freedom in using apps. I'm not sure how many of these people really understand that the act of doing that breaks down the security foundation provided by their phone's operating systems. Again, we can blame humans who make mistakes in coding or system configuration that result in systems having vulnerabilities. This might be leaving a default password in the system, forgetting to lock down the system after enabling debug mode, or leaving a backdoor open so that there's a way to conveniently fix the system when something goes wrong. And finally, we must not forget that there can be internal fraud too, where people who have administrative rights to systems or who have deep knowledge about how the system works may be able to defraud the system for personal gains.
All very good points, Chiang Kai. So on the topic of mobile devices and mobile apps, we can clearly see how companies have embraced this platform to reach out to their users and customers. And let's acknowledge that the mobile device is perhaps one of the most personal devices that we use today. Some would even argue that your mobile phone is more precious in that sense than your wallet and even your passport. And we'll be discussing that topic in a future episode. Now, Chiang Kai, understanding the current risk and threat landscape in the mobile world today, how do you see technology and user behavior evolving over the coming years and maybe even decades?
What we can do is to minimize the risk by implementing technical controls and defenses. That means anticipating human weaknesses when we design systems. As an example, let's say we are designing a secure mobile app. We should assume that the mobile device is rooted or jailbroken and make sure that the app can still run securely in such an environment. One approach is to check whether the device is rooted before allowing the app to continue to run. But what if this check can be bypassed? And do we really want to exclude all the users who have rooted their phones? That's why it's important to have multiple layers of defense. Assume that the operating environment will not be secure, assume that some defenses will be broken, and assume that your users may not always do things in a proper way. In V-Key, we don't trust anyone or any other software or even hardware. Our VOS virtual secure element is designed to be able to run securely in an untrusted environment, even if the device is rooted or jailbroken, or if there are lots of malware running in it. And we have designed a sophisticated system of randomizations to ensure that even our own engineers cannot reverse engineer the VOS that our customers are using. We practice dual control. That means 2 or more persons from different teams in seeding server operations that involve a hardware security module, both for our own generation of VOS firmware as well as for customers' generation of individualized software tokens. This is so that no single person would have everything that can break the system.
So, Chiang Kai, we are a security company and we take security very seriously. But I have to ask you this. What would be the 3 tips you can give our listeners to ensure that they become more conscious of their mobile or web or digital activity?
Well, firstly, don't root or jailbreak your phone unless you're a security expert and know exactly what the security implications are. And next, do not install apps from untrusted sources and always assume that apps may be able to do bad things to you. This applies to not just smartphones, but to laptops and tablets as well. And as for those permission prompts that you get when launching a new app for the first time, think carefully before you tap on allow. For example, do you really expect your game app to need access to your contacts database? Finally, never disclose your personal passwords or one-time passwords that you receive via SMS to anyone, even if the person who asks for it sounds like an official from your telco, your bank, or government. And before you key in your password for a website, double check that the URL or web address is the correct one, just in case it is a phishing attempt.
Thank you, Chiang Kai, for your inputs and tips on how we can all become more aware and more savvy when it comes to digital security, and how these small measures make it more difficult for unethical hackers to steal our data. If you would like to pose some questions to us, please send these through to the email address below. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook for more frequent bite-sized security tips. I'd like to once again thank Chiang Kai for joining us, and until next time, see you soon.